Hey, Chris,
Yeah.
could you, I mean, your business, but that's your bottom third there. Probably a bad idea.
No, no, it's fine.
What's it say?
I got X for you.
You're, okay. I just people can misinterpret that.
Warcraft quotes.
Okay. Hey, I'm just trying to forego problems before they ever occur.
No worries, man. I get it, but it honestly, it's a joke that a lot of America is gonna get. It's a
Especially,
video game joke, and it's about the accent. I'll change it to you.
Yeah, I just don't need you to have any grief in your life, man.
Actually, there. How's that?
I like that.
You're, actually, John knew me. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. It's 2100 on a Friday night. It's actually about 2110. This is the Brushfire Mind. My name's Christopher Lowry. I've got Steve, John, and Cameron here with me. And, you know, we keep saying the show's not going to be all about politics. We do need to, I want to talk about some other stuff tonight, too, but it's it's just been that kind of week for the politics, hasn't it? We've just got some madness going on. Apparently the Democrat Party's just completely decided, okay, Bernie was never anything but a fucking voodoo doll. Just we needed a Bobo the Clown that Hillary could punch a little bit because otherwise we didn't have an excuse to put on debates and nobody would have known what she had to say. And it's interesting in a way with that. Hillary hasn't really said much. She hasn't done a whole lot of the large public stuff. She's been out of the light. She's been kind of off to the side, except for these debates. And I got to tell you, I don't know how much you guys have watched the Democrat debates, but oh my God, are they a fucking circle jerk? I won't go so far as the left likes to criticize the right debates. I hear a lot of criticism of the GOP debates from the left. Oh, they just stand there and call each other names. They never say anything useful. They just call each other liars and all this stuff. And of course, for anybody who's ever watched a debate, they know that's just an outright falsehood. There is more of that going on this season than there was in the last one. Not a lot more though. The last debate cycle was pretty fucking hairy. Um, but with the Democrats, it's very much that everybody on the stage just keeps saying the same thing over and over again. Um,
Variations.
yeah, Bernie will say, "I think everybody should have free college," and Hillary will say, "Well, I think everybody should have free college, than you do." Or it's just a total circle
That's
jerk.
about it.
Now, the GOP debates this season have actually been interesting and substantive. And there have been a lot of fireworks. And Trump, I got to say, like him or love him or hate him, he is a hell of a showman. Hell of a showman. He does make for some interesting theater. Um, and honestly, it's not like it hasn't been 400 years since frickin' Debris said that politics will eventually degenerate into nothing but theater of social norm, where the only thing that matters, the only point on which a person can be elected, is the cult of personality, the popular opinion, the popular image. And I think we're there. It's especially given the drastic effect that Facebook and Google have had on the debates. Several of the debates have actually been um, sponsored by either Facebook or Google or both. And the questions that are being asked are being driven real time by Google, people doing Google searches, people posting on Facebook, and people doing Twitter. So on the one hand, you could actually argue that has the people more involved in the process to a point. And honestly, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I could go either way on it.
It's a bad
I
thing.
do know for sure that in a pure democracy, 51% of the people can vote to kill the other 49. If 51% of the people cannot vote to kill the other 49%, then what you have is not a democracy, not purely. So, Patrick, welcome to the show. Be quiet. I'll catch up with you in a minute.
All right.
Good to see you, though, brother. So we've kind of got that going on. Hillary, she's a shoo-in. She's just the whole anointed thing that they've been talking about, the coronation rather than a nomination. It seems to be very much going that direction. Now, on the GOP side, here's what's really just killing me. If I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times. I don't necessarily think Trump is the right man or the best man for the job. And absolutely. I'm not a real big fan of Cruz or Rubio. Steve, I know how you feel about Gary Johnson, but in fairness, it's not happening this time around. Now, I do think that a Trump presidency does pave the way for, at a minimum, the Gary Johnson Libertarian Party to get that 5%, like you and I were talking about earlier, Steve, and actually legitimize the Libertarian Party as its own individual, separate, and legitimately third party. So, in that respect, a Trump presidency could be the best thing to happen to America since fucking George Washington. You know, the last independent that won the office.
That's a bold statement.
I have a question for all of you guys.
The last non-party affiliate who won the office. Now, before we get into questions and stuff, John, let me track this a little further. What's really pissing me off, though, is after they made such a big stink. I mean, it was just the worst thing in the world that it was possible for Trump to just drop the GOP and go independent. And he said, look, I want to know that I'm going to be treated fairly. And they made that big stink about fucking signing the promise to support the eventual nominee. And now that Trump is clearly the most probable nominee, everybody who stood on that stage and raised their hand and said, I will support the eventual nominee, every single one of them, except for Chris Christie and Ben Carson, is now going back on that pledge. Now, I'll give some points. I'll try to be fair on this to Cruz and Rubio. The race is not over. Now, Rubio's done. He's done. His hanging out and waiting for Florida is a bad joke. Even if he wins Florida,
he's gonna ruin his own career.
He's a fucked ass. He's done. The only reason for him to hang out for Florida is to spite Cruz and Trump, and because somebody in the GOP establishment is pushing to stop Trump. Now, and this will be the last thing that I say before I ask you guys to start commenting, and I'll call you out by name. I'm going to start with you, John, because you clearly are chomping at the bit there. But with that, I kind of lost my train there. This whole idea of a brokered convention, going to the convention, and anybody not owning the nomination, I think that's basically the end of the race. A brokered convention or a fucking contested convention equals Hillary Clinton in the White House. Unless, of course, she's actually convicted, and then we get Bernie. So, yeah, I see that grimace there, Patrick. That's it's serious shit. Because what we're talking about is literally the fate of the world. And I'm sure that sounds dramatic, but the president of the country that can fucking kill everybody and owns all the money is a big deal. Debt with China, blah, 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 blah. They still fucking trade the dollar. They still weigh their gold in the dollar. I don't give a shit. I mean, $19 trillion in debt, that's a terrible thing, and fucking Obama should answer for that, but everybody still trades on the dollar. So what we're looking at is the GOP functionally sabotaging Trump and all this, they somehow they don't understand why Trump has become popular. And guys, it's not that complicated. We
It's
like
really
the idea
not.
of Trump. Those of us who like the idea of Trump, it's this simple. For 8 fucking years, you have failed to do your goddamn jobs. I've been paying you for 8 years to fucking sit around with your thumbs up your asses and just let Obama do whatever the fuck he wants to. Okay, I made some money off Obamacare. It worked out okay for me. And my health insurance is in great shape because, well, I went and killed a bunch of bad guys for the country. That's just how it rolls down. Oh my God. Selling health insurance, being a licensed insurance agent and working in that industry, boy, I tell you what, I could not be more happy about my time in the service and what that means for me and my family. Because, I mean, average monthly cost of $800-900. That's fucking outrageous.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to go ahead and pitch this over to John for a minute because he clearly had something to say.
No, I was just kind of stretching around, but I would like to know a deeper question is that we've all become so accustomed to accepting the political theater. You yourself said that the Republican Party did nothing for 8 years during the Obama administration, which implies that you are still assuming that the Republicans and the Democrats are actually adversarial parties. They're not. They are just different sides of the same coin. The Democrat and Republican parties, as we know them, are really the establishment party.
Mm-hmm.
And it may be that the Sanders and the Trump and perhaps the Cruz candidacy is the rise of the, call it what you may, the outsider party. I don't know. This is the 2008 Occupy Wall Street or Tea Party movements on both sides, right, left, whatever, all the conventional labels. It all comes down to who's got it and who doesn't. You and I and everyone on this channel are all clearly outsiders. Anyone who's making less than $1 billion a year is clearly an outsider. Maybe I guess my question relates to: if all of the conventional candidates, up to Rubio certainly, Clinton definitely, are establishment candidates, maybe Cruz is a bit of a loose cannon. Can Trump be controlled? And if so, how do we know he's not actually just a false flag candidate? I don't know. What can we believe in anymore? Any insights?
I want to hear from Patrick for a minute.
Well, going into Super Tuesday, I figured Trump was going to do pretty well. Chris and I talked about this a little bit the other day. Wednesday morning when I woke up, I still had absolutely no faith that Cruz was going to do as well as he actually wound up doing. I figured he would carry Texas. A lot of folks down there still love the guy. He won pretty decisively there. And then he won Oklahoma. He won Alaska and one other state. And then you start looking at the delegate count. And, okay, Rubio won Minnesota. Ooh. Still, his goose is cooked, like Chris said. He's not going to, I don't even have his heat carry his home state. Look at Cruz did. So, in my mind, you're left with two options. A, I think at this point, with Cruz as well as he is starting to do, there's no way Trump comes away clean with the nomination. I don't see it. So you go to the test convention, broker convention, whatever you want to call it. They get there. There's enough politicos who don't want Trump to be associated with the Republican Party. They do the wheeling and dealing change the rules of the convention, name who they want, presumably Ted Cruz or Marco Rubio.
It wouldn't be Cruz.
Then you have the huge uproar of the establishment changing the rules to protect itself, and rightly so. And if that happens, yeah, Hillary Clinton's going to be your president because everyone's just going to call that on what it is. The way around that, as I see it, is Cruz and Rubio won 52% of the vote that day. Trump won 32%. Surely these Harvard-educated advisors that both Rubio and Cruz have are saying, guys, maybe it's time you start thinking about teaming up. Now, observing the pecking order, Cruz obviously would be your pick for president, and Rubio as vice president. You then coalesce the two factions of the Republican Party at this particular moment. The ultra-conservatives for Cruz will be happy that their guy's going to be president. Rubio, who's the current pretty face of the establishment, and who's given him his advice and telling him what to say and all of his talking points, doesn't sound like Marco Rubio anymore to me personally. So you're left with Cruz-Rubio ticket, which I think a lot of people will get behind because then you're not going to have Trump. But then again, like I said last week, would you be willing to accept Trump as president because he goes to D.C., Congress doesn't like him, so they don't want to pass anything that he proposes. So then he throws his fits and says, well, if you're not going to pass anything I throw out to you, I'm going to veto everything that comes across my desk. And it just goes back and forth into dysfunction. Nothing happens, and things start to kind of balance themselves out on their own. I know Steve gave a big nod to that last week. While that's a possibility, I'm beginning to think that it's much more likely that you're probably going to see, and they better do it pretty damn quick, Cruz and Rubio getting together and saying, okay, let's do this thing just so that we can prevent Donald Trump from doing what he's doing. Which you'll probably still have a lot of the establishment's just protecting itself, but at least it's not as bad as going to a brokered convention.
Okay.
Next.
Cameron.
I really, really, really wanted to talk to Chris yesterday after Mitt Romney gave his speech, because Chris is a Trump supporter. I'm not. Of everybody that's left, I would probably pick Ted Cruz. And again, more than anything, and I know Steve hates this, but it's not going to be Gary Johnson, man. It's just not. There's not enough. That hasn't reached critical mass yet. The system is geared so well so that the two major parties suck up all the oxygen in the room. As long as they have to beg John Stossel for airtime on his show just to make a debate happen, I just don't think it's viable. So I only say all that to say is I am not a Trump supporter. I've kind of thought long and hard about it. And on the one hand, I believe that as people get older, they have a tendency to track to the right, and I could see how that would be true for Donald Trump as well. But just with how far to the left he's been, some of the other things that he said. However, Mitt Romney's speech really kind of made me wish that I could take my vote for Ted Cruz back and give it to Donald Trump, because I felt like it was very condescending. Like my mother voted for Donald Trump, and my mother-in-law voted for Donald Trump, and one of my best friends voted for Donald Trump. And you're basically saying that all of these people are stupid and irresponsible for trying to do something so radically different. But
what I say on the internet.
Say what?
Oh, people are really crude. All these people are the trolls insult Trump supporters in the worst possible way and state that very term, that these people are ignorant, redneck racists.
Yeah, I deal with a lot of black people in my day-to-day work on the job, and a lot of them sincerely believe that Donald Trump is racist. They're terrified of him being president. They think that he has it in for black people and Mexicans. So that perception is there. That's not my issue with Trump. I don't think he's actually going to do like start a race war or anything like that. My issues with Trump are, just a few years ago, he was okay with abortion and things like that. And plus, I know enough about commission sales to where when I hear him talking about building a wall, I'm like, we're not going to build a wall. We'll probably improve border security, but we're not going to build a wall. That's why we're starting with such an extreme position. It's anybody that's ever been in commission sales, one of the first things one of the first things that you learn is you don't ever start with what you really want or what your best offer is, because everybody fancies themselves this master negotiator, and everybody comes up behind you and asks for a discount or what else can you do for me or whatever. And if you start with your best offer on the table from the beginning, you have nowhere to go. And there's a lot of that's going on here. So I'm actually about to throw it back to Chris, because the question I wanted to ask him earlier today was, given all that, given the fact that there are people like me that are, legitimately, I don't want to vote for Trump, but I'm sympathetic to why other people are voting for Trump. And I even think that what Mitt Romney did was really illustrative, because it was really kind of a pussy move for him to not endorse anybody. Oh, he's going to come out and he's going to attempt to torpedo the guy that's in the lead. He couldn't win what should have been a damn throwaway election, but he's going to torpedo Donald Trump, who has basically come in and shown everybody how to get the job done. And it's okay for him to do that, but he's not going to endorse anybody. That, in and of itself, so well proves how far out of touch the establishment itself is. Pick a side. I don't get to just throw somebody overboard in my day-to-day life. That's not how things work. So
throwing spitballs and say, "Oh, but I'm above it all." But I'm throwing spitballs, but I'm above it all.
Yes, yeah. Like, of course he's above it all. He tried twice and couldn't make it to the presidency. He wishes he had half of what Donald Trump has, honestly. So the thing that I'd like to throw it back to Chris with is, other than just this, I think that Mitt Romney might have actually gotten Donald Trump elected, because every time you do that, Donald Trump goes up in the polls, because there are more and more people that are like, fuck you. Why? Why do you not get that the problem is not Donald Trump? Okay, maybe the problem is Donald Trump, at least on the surface, but the real problem is not Donald Trump.
Trump is not electable on his own merits. He's electable because he's not establishment. My God, I'll state it right up front. I'm a heavy Trump supporter. I volunteered in his office. But the election is not about Trump. It's about Trump's supporters realizing that they can turn around and stand up to the establishment that has wiped out their lives.
Well, that and the fact that Trump was able to get up and just shoot his mouth off the way that he does, that's another thing that people really love about him. That's another reason he's doing as well as he's doing. He doesn't care what you think. He's going to get up there and say what he wants to, because he doesn't need anybody to give him approval.
So, well, then my question for the two Trump supporters would be, let's say we go through this whole process and there is no bullshit, so to speak. We come down to the convention and there's not a clear winner. Somebody doesn't have the 1,200 votes. And it's not because of any game the convention played. It's because of how it all worked out.
Okay.
You get there, then the odds of Trump being the nominee actually go down, because he's got so many people that are against him. Do you still stay with the party, as it were?
No.
If
the party walked away from me metaphorically 8 years ago, and literally 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
The party said that if all the Republican people like me, formerly Republican, don't want to do what we tell them to do, then we're going to take our marbles and go away, and they should all follow us because we're the leadership. The leadership, so-called leadership, can go to hell. If they want to take the Republican Party away from the nominated candidate of the people, then that is not my party anymore. I will not vote for Cruz. Frankly, I got nothing really against Cruz. But
Well, then why not?
Hang
You got
on,
nothing
hang
against
on,
Cruz, then why not?
Hang on, back up. John, okay, so what Cameron's talking about is not Trump getting to the convention with 1,233 votes instead of the 1,237 he needs. We're talking about, like, we get to convention and you've got Trump with 500 and Cruz with 500 and Rubio with 300.
Right.
If it shakes down that way, and then the convention does choose Cruz, look, at the end of the day, I'm voting against the Democrat. That's
Agreed.
something else that you've all heard me say
Sure.
many times before. I don't generally vote for Republicans. I vote against Democrats. In fact, in my voting time, that's pretty much what I've had to do. Those are the options I've had. Except for with George W. Bush, I had to vote for the Democrat against the communists.
I actually voted for Ralph Nader instead of GW twice.
Wow.
Ralph Nader?
He wasn't a Democrat, and it sure as hell wasn't GW Bush.
Good point.
I voted for a Bush.
Anyway, let me pop back over to Trump again for a minute. So here's the thing. John, you said that Trump is not electable on his own merits. I don't think that's true. Because we have so many
Trump is
so many American voters now identify as independents. And here's the thing. No matter how loud he is, no matter how big a show he puts on, no matter how fucking orange he paints himself or how crazy that hair is, at the end of the day, when you're looking at a stage with fucking Cruz, Rubio, Bernie Sanders, and fucking Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump is literally the moderate. Donald Trump, out of every candidate in this primary, is actually a moderate. Now, here's the thing. The last few fucking Republicans, Romney, that shitburger fucking piss stain before him,
McCain?
John McCain, that piece of shit, George W. Bush, okay, I don't hate Bush. I wasn't his biggest fan. But at the end of the day, they're squishy fucking liberal moderates. They're barely to the right of Hillary and Bernie. All three of them. But I held my nose and I voted for the motherfuckers because it was them or the actual communist with Barack Obama and now, of course, with Hillary and Bernie. Now, I'll actually give Hillary some points. She is less of a communist and more of just a...
than Bernie is.
She's less of a communist
Far
and
more
more of
malignant.
just a man America hater than Bernie or Obama. So I guess I can give her some points there. But Hillary is a fucking... She is a domestic enemy of the United States of America. Her platform is the changing of the Constitution without a convention. That's the platform of the Democrat, is that the Constitution is incorrect and should be altered, and it should be done so by executive fiat or by the Congress, ignoring the requirement of a constitutional convention. Marijuana cannot be made illegal without altering the Constitution. Interstate commerce between insurance companies cannot happen by law without altering the Constitution and still be legal. These things are enshrined in the Constitution. It simply is in as little as the 10th Amendment. If we didn't say you can do it, you can't fucking do it.
Forget it, Chris. To vote for Hillary is a vote to kill the last of the Constitution.
Now, I did see a funny meme. I did see a meme that made me chuckle. It said, no matter what happens, this will be an historic election because we'll either get the first president, the first woman president, the first Jewish president, the first Latino president, the first Canadian president, or the first Oompa Loompa. I thought that was cute. I saw another one that read exactly the same way, except it got the trumpet and said the last.
It's not exactly true. For instance, James Buchanan was the first gay president. Dwight Eisenhower was the first Jewish president. You know, Frederick Douglass ran for president in 1876 as a black man.
No.
You know, people trying, the media trying to make something an historical event. You know, it's just silly, pandering to a circus crowd atmosphere.
Well, that's what
The
it's
world was
become.
not invented yesterday.
Well, now that a minority has been the president, like, it's really difficult for you to be the first woman or the first black guy or the first Latino to do anything because you've now had a minority be the president. I feel like if there's a bar, you're the president. I'm sorry, that tops it.
Well,
Yeah, but I was the first astronaut ever. Were you the president? No, you weren't.
one of the problems I had, one of the things that concerned me about Herman Cain, and I loved Herman Cain, and same thing with Ben Carson, and to a lesser extent with Hillary. If we follow the first black president with the second black president or the first woman president, and that's a factor in their election cycle, then we set this dangerous precedent where getting elected requires you to out-minority or out-victim the competition.
Agreed.
So your whole platform becomes, well, I'm victimier than she is. Hey, we've got the first gay president. Yeah, well, fuck you. We've got the first transgender president. Beat that. First hermaphrodite president?
Hey.
And I don't honestly, I could vote for a woman or a black man. I don't give a shit. But I can't vote for them because they're a woman or because they're a black man.
You know what that does is, like you talked about setting a dangerous precedent. This disturbing thought just popped in my mind. We start going down that path where we just select somebody because they are blah blah blah. How long before we reach idiocracy?
Oh, you mean like voting for a Bush or a Clinton because they're a Bush or a Clinton?
Well, no, he means more like...
That's a dynasty. We've had a Bush or a Clinton in the White House. Obama's really Clinton Part 2 since 1980.
Oh, did you ever see the movie Idiocracy?
I might have seen parts of it, but I get your point.
Yeah.
You know,
would you like to
getting
order
rid of dynasties,
big-ass fry?
whether you like Trump or not, by suppressing the Bush dynasty for another 2 generations, he's done us, the national political sphere, a great favor. If we can also put down Hillary Clinton, even if Hillary Clinton is a great person, which she's not, you just can't have these dynasties. If you have dynasties, then what you have is a slippery slope into permanent aristocracy. And you can kiss your Constitution goodbye.
And honestly,
Gentlemen,
one can make a very solid argument for the establishment of an autocracy has really already occurred in America with our ruling class. It's I'm not going to say it's a hard fact, but it's damn near it. Cameron, you were about to quit because
all the
you're
major offices way more power than they were ever intended to have. We have done this to ourselves.
Witnessed. Rest well, friend, and wake.
I will.
All right, boys, we're down 1.
And then there were 3.
Oh, well.
All right, I'm going to take over for a minute. I've got a little monologue that I was going to start the show with, but we...
Knock it out. What do you got?
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and take over, and
And
y'all can sit quietly and listen and enjoy the ramble. So, why is every Bernie Sanders supporter secretly wants to elect Donald Trump and are wrong for thinking this way? We live today in an America that is so overburdened with hypocrisy, and quite intentionally so, that we the people are just flat confused. Environmentalists preach about carbon footprints and run around in big-ass SUVs, private jets, and cityscape yachts. Politicians scream about fiscal discipline while expanding already redundant programs. School boards cry out about our lagging academic standards while slashing fine arts programs. Poor people lacking health insurance, so we establish a system where the poor can have it at the expense of the middle class while ensuring that the working middle class can no longer afford it. Then there are the salads and cigarettes. Even as America screams out about its obesity epidemic, we continue to open more and more fast food restaurants in every city in the country. We decry the dangers of smoking cigarettes, even as some large portion of our citizenry are medicating with dangerous, mind-altering drugs that have lists of terrifying side effects longer than Michael Brown's rap sheet. Bernie Sanders is a socialist who aligns with the Democrats and identifies politically as an independent. He is literally a man who runs for political office as an individual that is opposed to individuality. Let me say that again. He is individually opposed to individuality, and to such an extent that he has sparked a movement of individuals in a mob decrying the evils of individuality. The glaring irony of their political opposition to Donald Trump is that they fear him as a potential dictatorial force, crying that he cannot be controlled, all the while ignoring that what he is, not what he represents, but what he actually is a strong individual success story. They, and I do mean the enemy left, do not let my they confuse you with the they, or Das Mann, or in the crowd. They are terrified of his becoming a sort of dictator king, that they will vapidly support Bernie Sanders, who actually is running on the same platform of pseudo-unity and pull that every single dictator in history outside of the divine emperors has risen to power, many through popular election. This is how empires are built. Even amid all of this, there's this gigantic question. Do we actually crave a dictator? Or more directly, are we, humanity, afraid of freedom? More and more, we live in an America where the policy maneuvers of the tyrannical left have created huge gaps in our definitions of not only success, but our basic understanding of mere survival. As the war on poverty rages ever onward, we see staggering growth in the realms of single motherhood, absentee fatherhood, and a resultant juvenile delinquency that is becoming even ever more destructive and less useful each day. Where once we might have found these delinquents actually developing into liberty-championing protest artists, it is much more common now for them to simply join a gang. Young developing criminals gravitate toward gangs with strong leaders for the same reasons that they vote Democrat. You get to use a gun to take stuff from other people without working, and you get a stand-in father figure to replace the one that you should have had. This is the real reason for the active development of complex social welfare programs that favor the single mother, and incentivize her into poverty, to such an extent that one of the most common practices of welfare fraud is for a mother and father to remain unwed, reside in the same home, but list the man's parents' address to provide the bureaucrat with the cover that they no longer live together. This is a major force multiplier when the first of the month rolls around, because now mommy and daddy get a government check, instead of just getting one between the two of them. Add to all of this Bernie's plan to make Americans even dumber by devaluing the education system and weakening the minds of future voters so that they will be even more easily confused, and we have a perfect storm prepared to argue that we should free all of the nonviolent criminals from prison and begin executing political detractors after abolishing the First Amendment. Just in case anybody missed it, the recent polling data shows that a near majority, not quite over 50%, but a very near majority of current college students actually support either abridging or abolishing the First Amendment because they're so afraid of hate speech. And just in case you missed the quip about devaluing the education, how does one devalue a currency? You print more of it. How does one lower the prices of goods or services? You increase production and distributorship in order to overcome markup with volume for profit generation. How do you ensure that nobody's sheepskin is worth the skin it's already not printed on anymore? Give everybody a degree. Make a thing common and readily available. This is the surest way to make it less valuable. A college degree cannot help you get a job in a competitive marketplace, and there is no such thing as a non-competitive market where everyone has a degree. But it can artificially extend your adolescence into adulthood and allow you to put off the arduous task of adulting for another 4 years. So at the end of the day, what the Bernie voter really wants is what he accuses Trump of being, namely a big bully fascist, bent on destroying liberty and prosperity. So they will vote against Trump and in their folly actually get what they so crave, despite their rabid assertions to the contrary, in their precious burn, and therewith enshrined an abolition of prosperity.
That kind of answers my initial question, which is that no matter which way we go, even with an outsider candidate, we seem to be going, heading towards autocracy. Some people say, well, what are our choices? You know, we have a choice between a criminal, a communist, and an authoritarian. I am crossing my fingers and taking my chance on Trump under the assumption that his ego will prevent him from doing too many clumsy things. I kind of like him for his ego. I know he's going to say and do some clumsy things, but at least they will be from an individualist point of view. He will reward egos because he's ego-driven.
The
Ego is the enemy of collectivism.
Let me grab a hold of this real quick.
Yeah.
I know you were about to say something, Patrick, but just real quick. You talk about the ego, and when I was bitching a little bit ago about the last several Republican candidates, Romney, Bush, that other shitburger, I called them squishy moderates or squishy liberals, and they are. You think back on the debate where Obama looked at Mitt Romney and said, "Hey Mitt, the 1980s called. They want their foreign policy back," and Mitt Romney didn't have the cojones, the wherewithal, the fucking historical reference frame, or the goddamn temerity to man up and say, "Oh, you mean the foreign policy that recovered us from the disastrous Carter economy? The foreign policy that brought down the fucking Berlin Wall and ended the Soviet Union? You mean the foreign policy that brought average housing fucking interest rates down from 9% to 7%?
20%.
Foreign policy that
interest rates were 20% in 1980.
Say again?
Interest rates were 18 to 20% in 1980.
Right. And I mean, old Ronnie Reagan, fucking, he was a liberal Democrat before he became a political force. And okay, now to compare Trump and Reagan and the fact that they both used to be Democrats and switched sides, with Reagan, he was a governor and had several years under his belt as a tried conservative before he ran for office. And he did do it in a political atmosphere where the failure of Barry Goldwater pretty much emboldened the Democrats to say, okay, a fucking conservative just can't win. There's no way a conservative harder. And so
call him a movie actor clown.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
I remember it.
And
they locked him as a buffoon.
49 states to 1 fuck shellacking.
Yeah.
Owned it.
Only
that's
thing I've seen in my entire life, and I remember stating this to the Republican Council or Republican Party leadership in Alaska, by email back in July of 2015. Trump is the biggest thing since Ronald Reagan. I was actually wrong. It's in many ways, if he gets in, it will be a bigger revolutionary change in politics, perhaps bigger than Reagan, if Trump can live up to it. That's it.
And the thing about that statement, the thing about that statement is it is only true because the Overton window has shifted so far to the left. Trump is running as a conservative ostensibly, and one of the greatest criticisms against him has been that he's not a real conservative, that so many of his policies are actually liberal. In a lot of ways, he's much more conservative than his counterparts. He's the only one that started talking about 14th Amendment fucking birthright citizenship, which is an issue. It's something I've been talking about. Shit, John, you remember me bringing it up, I'm sure.
Yes.
When we were having discussions at DLI, and
10 years ago.
Stephen Patrick had been hearing me say anchor babies are not citizens because of the fucking clause of the 14th that says, and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. There's not a lot of room for interpretation.
You're missing something, Chris. What you're missing is that there are about 20 points that Republicans and Democrats have agreed upon somewhere back in the mists of time, things that they will do and things that they will ignore. For instance, either party, Democrat or Republican, loves bombing foreign countries. Clinton had was it Yugoslavia, Somalia, the air war over Iraq.
Well, look at the whole history of the United States.
They both love their freaking bombing campaigns.
You cannot have a Democrat in the White House without a war. You cannot have a Democrat in the White House and not go to war with somebody.
My point is,
historically true.
We have been indoctrinated to think that it's going to make a freaking difference when we are obviously, everybody realizes the writing on the wall says that privately the Democrats and Republicans agreed upon a platform which they will get to incrementally. They both are going to support a war. They're both going to keep open doors or open borders. They're both going to support anchor babies. They're going to pretend to fight about abortion, but not really. Abortion is very much a collateral issue. It does not affect the life of nations, other than the fact of reducing the population by 30 million people. They're both going to support the continued national debt growth, whether it's by growing a bigger military or whether it's by growing a bigger welfare state. The underlying issue is they both support the Federal Reserve as a private industry holding the U.S. government and people hostage. These are not, so tell me where there's been any radical shift between Republicans and Democrats. There hasn't been, because it's the same underlying premise. So if Trump comes along and changes the entire national dialogue and says, it's the unwelcome point. Hey, what about immigration? Hey, what about open borders? Hey, wait a minute. We don't need to be at war with Russia. They're not our existential enemy. Hey, wait a minute. Why are we even in the Middle East? That's a shakeup.
Yeah, that's solid. Let me pop back over to Patrick.
Please.
You clearly had something to say. I want to hear from Steve and Patrick for a little while. Hey, real quick, let me just say this. We have hit the 10 o'clock. We are 1 hour in, and I'm happy to hang out as long as you guys are willing to keep running your fucking mouths. That's great. So, Patrick, please take us away. I'm going to step away to the door for a minute. Let's hear what you got.
Going back to the ego comment that you were making, John, Trump's ego, I don't think anybody can really deny that it's there. Domestically speaking, his ego, I think, would probably help make a pretty big difference. And that's something that I think we need, is somebody who's going to quit trying to be politically correct the way that everybody else has been trying to be politically correct for the last 30 years. Someone who's not going to bullshit me, just get up there and just, flop it out there for everybody to be like, hey, look, here it is, take it or leave it. Foreign policy-wise, that's a little dicey. While I would certainly love to think that, flaunting that kind of ego out on the world stage would probably get some people back in line with supporting the United States, it could also kind of be a little bit of a hindrance given, like, for example, everything that China's been doing with building the man-made islands and then militarizing them, and all of the problems they're going to crop up because of it. And the very weak and limp response from the rest of the world concerning such a thing. Trump doing that, I think, could cause a little bit of a over-the-cliff approach. Because all it's going to take is one time, somebody does something that he doesn't like. He says, well, you want to know something? We're going to march in there and straighten this shit out. And the rest of the world's like, well, now, just wait a second, Donald. And then the bullets and the bombs start flying. Well, then who knows where it'll go from there. But then again, maybe that's something the world needs again. Truman understood that. Which
Teddy
is why
Roosevelt.
Yeah. Truman, but the difference there too is that Truman was a military man far before he was before he was a politician, and once he became a politician and was president, he saw what the war was doing. He saw that it was grinding on and on and on, and he finally said, "You want to know something? That's enough of this. Are you done yet? No. Okay, go ahead and drop that bomb. Boom. Had enough yet? No. All right, we'll do it again. Boom. Had enough? That's what I thought." The thing about war is, and of course you and Chris have much more of a personal experience with it than ever I will. But to my mind, the thing about war and the way to defeat the enemy is you got to be willing to go one step further. And
Best way to win a war is not to get in one.
Well, that's certainly the pretty flowery explanation of it.
I'm not trying to be pretty flowery. It's not about being kumbaya, let's all hold hands. It's about having enough of a credibility that it doesn't get challenged. But you also cannot overbet what you've got. We are overbet to a huge degree. We have bases in I don't know how many countries. 250,000 soldiers are overseas, with all of the costs and expenses of keeping them there. 140 bases, not even counting all the secret bases, in any number of countries. We are vastly overextended. Even if we could afford it, if the country was not in debt, it's not about the money. It's about the national consciousness and the national energy is distracted in so many directions. And every time we turn around, we're dragged into one war or another simply because we have the military toys there to do something about it. In other words, we have a military which attracts wars to it that we don't need to be involved in. There's got to be 500,000 men and women came back from Iraq and Afghanistan missing body parts. For what? Did you have any, as a citizen here in America during that entire time, did you see your restaurant bill or your gas bill or your home heating and electric bill go down or change in any way because of the efforts in Iraq and Afghanistan? In other words, it brought you no benefits at all. And
what about
this? Because his kid is dead.
What if we were to?
We need to change the entire mentality.
All the bases. What if we suddenly started taking our bases overseas and converting them from military bases? Keep some military presence there. You need a little bit of a police power. You need a little bit of security power. But like Fort McPherson here in Georgia was recently purchased by Tyler Perry to be converted into basically a movie studio. What if we were to start closing bases overseas, as far as their primary military functions, and start converting them into fucking trade centers? What if we were to start treating them like U.S. ambassadorial territories conducting commerce with the local populations?
I like it.
Okay, I'm gonna grab on that, and I'm gonna yield my time, gentleman, to my left, Mr. Rodemoyer.
Yeah, Steve, you've been awful quiet.
Yeah, Steve,
Jump.
speak up, our resident libertarian.
You like that? It's actually been kind of pleasant listening more tonight than trying to fit in anywhere to talk. Just because everybody had some rather strong points they made tonight. It's been a good show. And we've talked about an overextended military, perpetual war, overblown currency, outrageous debt, loss of freedoms, limitations of others, and a tendency for ongoing generations to give up more. Why the fuck are you not voting libertarian? Seriously, that's the entire platform, guys. You tell me it's not viable. It is the answer to everything we've been going on about. Is it perfect? Nothing's perfect. But when the libertarians are the far-right party by wanting all the freedoms that the Constitution had guaranteed you, and we're seen as conservatives for that, how are you voting for any of these fuckheads you see on national television?
Steve's got a point.
I'm voting for libertarians because I want change. I'm not voting for this perpetual bullshit fed to me by the so-called left, so-called right, which Chris nails. They're basically Democrats and socialists. Communists, you can take it to any extreme, but it's all becoming synonymous. It's becoming generic terms again. But if you want things to change, that's the one thing Trump has right. You get out of what we know. Look at it this way. Congress has an approval rating of 7%, 6%. It changes by the month. They've got a re-election rate above 90%. Everyone hates the job they're doing, and they keep them in office. So, do we do this so we can keep bitching about the job they're doing? Give me a minute. If you want the change, get them the fuck out of office. I'm not a Trump voter. I won't be. You can tell me what you want about Gary Johnson not being viable for this presidency. I hear this from so many places. If you truly believe in what you're saying, you truly believe in voting for something, not as a roadblock for something else, look into the Libertarian Party.
Could I suggest this?
Absolutely.
I got to go with Trump right now. However, you put a thought in my head.
Good.
Which is maybe the way to take my shot at both the Democrats and the Republicans who betrayed me is the next chance I get for local and for state and whatever, straight up to Congress, vote Libertarian. Why not?
That's what I've been doing since I registered.
But on your part, I want to know that the Libertarians are not supporting open borders. I told you that the biggest problem I had against the Libertarians from years and years ago was that open borders plank. You dump that, now I'm interested.
Well, the main thing is, remember, what you read, the loud, how is it, but the squeaky wheel gets the grease. The loud people, like Libertarian Alex Jones, or purported Libertarian Glenn Beck, or any number of people that you put in front of a camera, theirs are the voices you're going to hear. The people that they're posting on the big manly pages about the open borders or anything else. The fact that we should be throwing laws out the window. True freedom means absolutely no law, no borders. You do what you want to, period, full stop, the end. That's not the way the world works. You cannot have a sovereign nation. You would be voting yourself out of a country, period. The sane majority in the Libertarian Party will tell you quick, you cannot have open borders and a welfare state. You cannot have uncontrolled immigration and a free ride for the downtrodden. We had a moratorium on immigration from the early 1900s to what, 1930s? Late 1920s,
No, it
1930
was longer
something.
than that.
Well, I know, and I don't have the notes in front of me, so I apologize for my
About
ignorance.
1895 to 1925.
Do you know why there was a moratorium?
Disease.
Not entirely.
No, it was primarily because we were having a large problem with assimilation.
Exactly. We had to give them time to acclimate. You have to give them time to assimilate into society, to carve their niche. Then you bring more people in where they can see what's going on and carve their niche. If you
Okay.
have a bunch of people in the country with no resources, no way to build the resources, they're reliant on the state for what they get. We have things in this country that allow people to rely on the state for everything they get. You cannot allow 20 million people to move into this country on a finite amount of tax income. You cannot do it. It cannot happen. It will fold a nation. No sane brain, at least in my estimation, could possibly think an open borders policy could ever work. The majority of the Libertarian Party does not feel that.
Okay. Then, if under that understanding, now see, I have been so pushed by the open door immigration, which has been open doors for about 40 years that I can recall. Oh yes,
Mhm.
Reagan, remember, pushed forward the first amnesty.
Yes,
Even the great conservative Ronald Reagan was all for amnesty too.
Mhm.
My point is, if the Libertarians, the Democrats, and the Republicans are all for open borders, they can all go to hell. I will go to Idaho.
Agreed. The main thing with that being, like I said, open borders and a welfare state cannot coexist. Even open borders and a sovereign nation cannot exist. Chris and I have had that conversation. You have to be able to know who's here if you're bringing in people, because you already have a country to provide for and to support and to drive forward, to inspire. I do believe that can be a politician's job, to inspire. I don't think their main job should be to limit what you're able to accomplish, which seems to be what both major parties want at this point.
Well,
I'm
I'm
going to
going to
derail
grab.
myself if I keep following that rabbit hole. But just on the immigration issue, I've struggled with this for a long time, especially with the amnesty thing, because I fully understand why people want to be here. I get it. I understand just going with Mexicans. I
I
understand,
want to be here.
especially in the northern territories in Mexico, what they're dealing with. I understand the problems the cartels cause. I understand the lack of an economy. I know why they want to be here. We have channels to do that. We don't have closed borders if people don't come here illegally. We have a route to citizenship already. It's convoluted, it's expensive, but it makes them prove they want to be here and they're going to provide a positive effect on things for this country. That's how it was designed from the time the doors were opened back up after the major moratorium. If that's not good enough for people, start to change the immigration laws. You don't open the borders because you don't agree with the immigration law. You come up with something that allows people to come here in a controlled manner. Not that I think we have to monitor 100% of immigrants for terrorism watches, but you have to kind of understand who you're bringing in. You have to know what you're adding to your society. And the fact that one of the things that drove it for a long time was making sure people were here, that people were here, were sponsored. They were with someone. They were proving they were working. They were bettering things for themselves, possibly their community. It was a different world 50 years ago. I wasn't there. All these things added up to what it took to be an American citizen. It didn't happen to be just somebody living in America. You were an American citizen the instant you took the nationalization oaths.
Now,
Go ahead, Chris.
on the immigration piece, one of the things that's not being talked about is the extraordinary burden that immigrants legal and illegal.
Mhm.
Legal immigrants and criminal aliens all present an extraordinary burden to our infrastructure, especially our education system. One of the many, many, many reasons that our education system is failing so miserably is more and more we have the children of criminal aliens attending our public schools, and for some reason these fucking libtards think that they need to accommodate every single one of them and have all their foreign languages available. I'm sorry, if you've got 5 different languages being spoken in a classroom, I'm great with cultural diversity. I am. But at the end of the day, you got to be able to do fucking business. If I walk into a McDonald's and the guy at the counter doesn't speak one of my 6 languages, I'm shit out a cheeseburger. And I'm a rare bird in the United States speaking more than one language, let alone more than 2. And at the same time, I've been to many fast food joints where the person I'm dealing with does not have a second language, is not from a foreign country. They have a dialect that's Ebonics or Island or fucking Creole or something like that, and they cannot communicate in basic modern standard English. Now, I've talked to you guys a little bit about this education class I took in the last semester of college, basically as an elective, and that was one of the things we talked about a lot in there. They talked about code switching and this, that, and the other thing, and I remember asking the professor, well, okay, so she speaks 2 languages. And I'm like, well, what do you know about learning a 3rd language? Well, it's learning a 3rd language. What's to know? No. Learning a 2nd language is memorizing another set of words and rules. Learning a 3rd language is an entirely separate and much more complicated neurolinguistic process. The neurophysiology of 3rd language acquisition is much closer to the neurophysiology of 1st language acquisition than to 2nd language. So when a person learns their 1st language, they have sounds thrown at them, and eventually they figure out that once I've heard somebody say cup 1,000 times while they're holding a thing that's shaped like this and has a beverage in it, oh, that's a cup. When you learn your 2nd language, somebody says, this is a cup. They don't even say this is a cup. They say, okay, you know what a cup is. Well, when you need to find a cup in Spanish, you're going to say, you're going to ask for what, Bern?
Copa. Una copa, por favor.
Yeah, copa, something like that.
Taza. Sure.
Yeah, copa, tazo. There's a few of them, but basically you're going to be told, hola, ¿cómo estás? Means hello, how are you? And you're going to memorize that.
It has synonyms more than anything else.
When you go for a 3rd language, your brain cannot process just memorizing a bunch of other words. So when you speak and hear in your 2nd language, what happens is you have hola, ¿cómo estás? Comes in your ear. It rattles around in your brain where your brain says hola, ¿cómo estás? Equals hello, how are you? I want to respond, I'm well, thank you, how are you? And to do that, I'm going to say, estoy bien, gracias, ¿y tú? So it comes in my ear in Spanish, I translate it in my head into English so that I know what I'm working with, and then I come up with my answer in English, and I translate that into Spanish before I produce it. When you learn your 3rd language, you skip that step. Your brain can't keep a 3rd language, and certainly not a 4th, 5th, or 6th or beyond, without total code switching.
I couldn't.
So when you go from English to Spanish to Korean like I did, well, I went English to Spanish to Latin and then Korean, but it comes in 안녕하십니까, and I think 안녕하십니까, Oh, 안녕하십니까, 네. You know, I hear 기분 어떻습니까, and I don't translate it, how are you feeling, and then say, I want to tell them I'm feeling good. I say, 기분 좋다. No, it comes in, 기분 어떻습니까, and it comes out, 기분 좋다. 기분이 좋다.
I never could do that. I could do it with Russian and Spanish. When I got to Korean, I couldn't retain the words. I know that I tried and put my effort into that course. It wasn't a lack of will. It wasn't a lack of effort. It was simply a lack of capacity, like asking a one-legged man to win a foot race. I could not keep up with these 20-year-olds. I couldn't do it. That was their second language. It was my fourth. I could not do it. And I was a few years older than 20 years old, too. And that's okay. I had enough will and I had enough intelligence, but I had never thought about that third and fourth language difficulty you just raised.
Well, by the time you got around to doing it, your brain said, "The fuck are you doing, man? You learned enough."
I said, Korea, learn something else.
And
right,
John,
my kilobytes were full.
And John, on that what I was just talking about, one of my professors at DLI, Boxanim, I don't remember his first name, but one of the Dr. Lees.
Itong Pei something? Yeah, did you ever have him?
Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers Sensei Nim. There was one of the Lees, he looked like a Korean Mr. Rogers. He was even 6'4".
No, that was not him. I'm talking about Itong Pei something Nim. He was an older man who had been part of Park Chung-hee's presidential council back in the 60s and 70s.
Oh, the one with all the metal in his teeth?
No, I don't think you had Itong Pei.
Anyway, the one I'm talking about, the Dr. Lee I'm talking about, I'll have to look him up later. But he was one of 4 co-authors on an academic paper entitled "The Neurophysiology of Second and Third Language Acquisition."
Okay, I'd like to talk to him.
So I read his paper, and he was a smoker. I was a smoker, so I read his paper, and to get some of my Korean speaking practice in, we'd go out to the smoke pit, and he would explain the neurophysiology of second and third language acquisition to me in Korean.
Wow!
And that's why I was a 3-3.
Amazing. I wish I'd had him. I took Spanish in high school. I took Russian in college. I took French in law school, or one summer in law school, and then along comes Korean. Holy crap! French, Spanish, and Russian weren't so bad. I could do those.
Oh yeah, compared to Korean, I can learn a Romance language in an afternoon.
Yeah, you just have to slur everything. French was
Nobody speaks Queen's English anymore.
I was telling, was it Robin Lee Allen, that I'm going to invent my own language. She was talking about Ebonics. So Chris, our new language will be Ivoric. What do you think?
Aboric?
Ivoric. If they've got Ebonics, we have to come up with Ivorics.
Okay, Ivory, I got you.
All right, I'm going to grab right here for just a minute and go back to what Steve,
Please.
that very, very powerful argument he made for voting libertarian. Steve, you and I have talked about this, I don't know how many times over the past few years since you kind of started swinging libertarian.
I think I always was. I just didn't know what it was called for a long time.
Well, and then fair enough. But that argument that you made, I think you had the most solid, forceful reason. You've just about got me convinced. Because I've told you several times, I so badly want a viable third party in this country, I can't even begin to express it. Because, as we've established, Democrats and Republicans, there's no difference anymore. And there hasn't.
There's a slightly different flavor in their oppression, but they are after the same stuff.
Let me give you a
Exactly.
little bit of a word of caution here. Many years ago, I was in a little place called law school, and we examined the elements and structure of the electoral system and all of the Supreme Court cases. And I have to say that the electoral structure is designed and then modified to prevent a third-party candidacy.
Absolutely. The monster will not allow itself to be eaten.
So,
But there
we've got
again,
an uphill battle.
that's why we need the change. We've had the same shit for so long. This election cycle and this whole presidential, all the debates, the candidates, you couldn't ask for a better commentary on what we've allowed to happen. We've allowed these people to go in and change the rules, change the way the shit's structured, change the way these people are elected, the way that everything happens has been left up to these folks that we continually elect, like Steve points out, over and over. They've got a 6% approval rating, but a 90% reelection. And that's because they bank on everyone up there is doing a piss poor job. They need to be voted out of office, except my guy because he's doing pretty good.
He's bringing me home the bacon.
That's it.
And that's everybody's mentality.
Yep.
Or
You know,
they're
I've
just so passive
gotten
they
to
don't vote in minor elections.
Right. And I've kind of gotten to the point where if you've got an I next to your name, I don't give a crap if you served one term. It's an automatic disqualifier. Um, Although along that vein, there was that one real interesting election cycle I remember because Sydney Nation was up for election again, and Steve and Chris know who that guy is. Um, and I was standing in line at the old Maxell building waiting to vote, and there's this black woman behind me, and she starts, looking over her sample ballot, and she goes, "Why is it that there's only one man running for Supreme Court? Why doesn't somebody step up and run against him?" You could have heard a pin drop, and I kind of turned around and I said, "Ma'am, I can answer your question." She goes, "Oh, yeah, what's your answer?" I said, "Nobody's stupid enough to run against Sydney Nation."
Yeah, Sydney Nation's my fucking hero. When
He
Oh,
was
yeah.
born to do what he did.
oh my God, when he had that fucking kid come in that had been busted for intent to distribute with, I think it was meth, and he sentenced the kid to probation, to pay a fine, and to go out and buy a coffin that he had to keep in his living room where he could see it every morning.
So that way, when he
That was
overdosed, all
his,
the chuck
that
it,
was
chuck
the
him
judge's sentence. You will go buy a coffin and you will see it every day.
Yeah. And, you know, I got to give the guy props, where most guys probably would have turned a blind eye and done whatever they could. He took a look at what he said, "Son, you done messed up and you're going to have the book thrown at you." Threw his own kid under the bus.
You have to.
And I think
Anybody is against the law applies to nobody.
right. And I think when our buddy Joe, when he came back from Iraq and the cops were waiting for him at the fucking airport to arrest him for not paying child support.
Oh, God.
John, I don't know if I told you about this one or not. We had this
No.
buddy. So he's downrange, right? Well, he's got a wife and kids. At the time, they're divorced now, but at the time he had a wife and kids, but he also had a baby mama that he was paying child support to. So while he was deployed for a year to Iraq, the baby mama got some uppity lawyer to go and file for increased child support, arguing, basically claiming that she was entitled to a portion of his combat pay and all the incentive pays that you get while you're deployed. And of course, you and I both know under UCMJ, the only pay that is eligible for garnishment under child support is your base pay, not even your BAH or your fucking COLA or any of that. Base pay only, period, the end, no questions asked. Well, anyway, she got some judge to sign off on increasing his child support. Well, of course, he was deployed to Iraq, so he didn't get any notification of this while he was
Homeland Security
deployed.
Relief Act.
Say again?
Soldiers and Sailors Relief Act.
Well, no. Just no. Don't say anything. Let me just finish.
Go ahead. Sorry.
You're jumping the gun. You're putting the cart before the horse.
Wait.
So
Wait.
while he was deployed, she had a judge decree that he owed more child support. He was already paying child support by payroll deduction. It was coming straight out of his check, but it never increased because it was already set up automatically. So when he gets back, he gets off the bird, and the cops are standing there waiting for him to pass his weapon off to a battle buddy, and they took him downtown and locked his ass up. He gets out of court or he gets to court on the Monday morning, and I'm pretty sure this case was before Sydney Nations. And it says, Your Honor, this is what happened. They're saying that I didn't pay child support. What I didn't pay is the increase in child support that she filed while I was deployed, and I was still paying automatically the full amount of child support, which is a portion of my base pay. And Nation said, "Oh, well, you have a nice day, young man, and young lady, and you, fucking counsel, are in my chambers immediately." I mean, he threw out the charges. He reversed all the claims against Joe's finances, and I'm not entirely certain that lawyer wasn't disbarred over that shit.
Yeah. And Sydney probably would have saw that one personally.
Because Sydney Nations is not the judge that you go in front of and say, Your Honor, it is my solemn duty to rob this American patriot.
Well, I have no problem going in front of that judge. No, I'm serious.
Oh, no.
I have no fear of that.
Most people who tended to be on his bad side didn't like him at all.
Yeah.
But everyone who understood the deserved punishments appreciated the man's efforts.
If I deserve a punishment, let me be punished. If I deserve to be rewarded, let me be rewarded. That's it.
That alone should define the actions of a man, at least. You know, hey, I know I'm doing this wrong. Well, Chris and I have had this conversation in the past. If you are a criminal, being shot during your work is a job hazard. It's something to accept. It's part of doing business in your line of work.
Getting shot at work is the same as a fucking industrial electrician having all his skin washed off by boiling sulfuric acid. It's a professional hazard.
That's right.
And it gets rid of all those ugly skin blemishes.
Well, it
removes unwanted fingerprints from hands.
Yeah, fuck it. Who needs fingerprints or, eyelids or scrotum?
Fingerprints are for little people. Oh, no.
Steve, do you remember that guy's name?
I wish I did, Chris. I'll see his face for the rest of my life, but I don't remember his name.
I don't either. Weird.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of miles between now and then, but I will see that face forever.
Fucking almost 15 years.
Yes, sir. Certainly is.
Well, gentlemen, I've had a lot of fun. We've covered a lot of territory. It's been very, very good.
So, one quick question before you go, Patrick. Has Chris mentioned to you anything about the whole relocation plan we've been playing with for about a month or so?
Wait. I tell you what. Stop right there. Let me cut you off right there. And guys, everybody hang out. And I tell you what, let's go ahead and kill the broadcast and stay in the room. We'll talk about that offline.
Good night, folks.
So, ladies and gentlemen, this has been the Brushfire Mind. We're about to sign off here at about 22:30.
Yes, sir.
Sir, 22:31. So we've given a solid hour and a half of the good old college try. And it's been a privilege and an honor to speak with everybody. And just remember, like I say every week, if you build a man a fire, you'll keep him warm for the evening. But if you set a man on fire, you'll keep him warm for the rest of his life. Good night.